So picture a giant mid-18th century chessboard.
Oh,
Only instead of, little wooden knights and rooks, the pieces are local rulers, massive regional armies, and literal war
oh,
elephants.
wow.
War elephants.
Yeah. And the board itself is the Coromandel Coast of India. But the two players who are actually moving these pieces around, trying to corner each other in this massive high-stakes game of global dominance, it's the English and the French.
It is, it's quite the visual, and I think
Right.
it captures the volatility of that era perfectly.
Right.
Because we're looking at a time when empires were expanding, sure, but they were doing it through proxies, through these shadowy alliances, and most importantly, through private corporations.
Which is just wild to think about. So for today's deep dive, we're decoding a 39-page intelligence report. It's basically an 18th century after-action memo.
Right, yeah.
And this was published in London in 1753, right after the dust settled. It's titled, A Genuine Account of Some Transactions in the East Indies.
A very unassuming title for what it actually is.
Exactly. But it's this primary source detailing the absolute chaos that erupted after the death of the Nabob of Arcot in 1749.
And our mission for this deep dive into the source material is really to decode this very complex, very bloody proxy war.
Yeah.
Because for you listening, we're going to uncover how shifting alliances, shocking betrayals, and the sudden emergence of this unpaid English volunteer completely flipped the balance of power in global history.
It's just a crazy story.
It really is. We're looking at the anatomy of a power vacuum, essentially, and how the people who fill it aren't always the ones with the biggest armies.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start with the spark that lit the powder keg, right? Because the English and the French are fighting this brutal war in India, but they haven't officially declared war on each other back in Europe.
Right, they're technically at peace back home.
Exactly. So it's July 1749, and the Nabob of Arcot, a man named Eniverdi Khan, is killed in battle by a rival faction. But before we go any further, just for anyone who might be fuzzy on 18th century Indian political titles, what exactly is a nabob?
So think of a nabob as a high-ranking provincial governor
Okay.
or a regional ruler who's operating under the umbrella of the broader Mughal Empire. They controlled vast territories, they collected massive amounts of taxes, and they commanded these very large standing armies.
So it's a huge deal.
Oh, absolutely. So when the Nabob of Arcot is killed, it is the equivalent of a massive geopolitical earthquake.
Right. And he wasn't just killed by random chance either. The text shows this was a calculated strike by two rivals, Muzaffar Jing and Chwenda Sahib,
Right.
and they were working in direct conspiracy with the French commander in the region, Mr. Dupleix.
Yes.
They attack the Nabob on the plains of Arcot, they get this huge victory, and they take a massive number of prisoners. But the late Nabob's son, Muhammad Ali Khan, he actually escapes.
Yeah, he manages to get away.
He runs to a highly fortified place called Trichinopoly, which basically sets up a rival claim to the throne.
Which means the French-backed faction doesn't have total control, right? The board is still contested.
Yeah.
And by March 1750, the narrative entirely flips. Muzaffar Jing's uncle, a man named Nazir Jing, marches into the province with an absolutely overwhelming army just to put down his nephew's rebellion.
And the text notes that this massive army causes absolute panic in the French camp. It's a complete rout.
Oh, total panic.
Right. The French and their allies fall back toward Pondicherry, and Muzaffar Jing actually ends up surrendering to his uncle. Nazir Jing locks him up.
Yeah, he throws him in prison.
So within less than a year, Nazir Jing holds all the cards. But hold on, I'm confused here.
Yeah.
If Nazir Jing is winning, and he has the French on the run, why do the English ambassadors, who are officially supporting his side, just walk away and leave him hanging in April of 1750?
That's a great question.
The text literally says they just packed up their forces and marched right back to Fort St. David. That makes zero military sense. Are they just retreating out of cowardice or what?
Well, no. It doesn't make military sense, but it makes perfect financial sense.
Wait, really?
Yeah. This is where we have to remember who is actually conducting this war. These are not sovereign nations fighting for national pride.
Right.
The English and French forces here are the East India companies. They are profit-driven trading corporations.
Oh, wow, right. They have shareholders to answer to.
Precisely. The English East India Company wanted specific land revenues to defray the massive expenses they had incurred, by deploying their military forces to assist the country government.
Okay.
And Nazir Jing, heavily influenced by his prime minister, a man named Shahnavaz Khan, just refused to grant those land revenues.
So the English essentially hand Nazir Jing an invoice for their military services.
Literally, yes.
And when he refuses to pay, they make this cold, hard corporate calculation, like no payment, no protection, and they just withdraw their troops.
They do. They pack up and leave. And what the English didn't realize was that Nazir Jing's prime minister, Shahnawaz Khan, was secretly colluding with Nazir Jing's enemies.
Oh, wow. So it's an inside job.
Exactly. By refusing to pay the English, the prime minister intentionally isolated his own boss. That purely financial decision by the English leaves a gaping power vacuum.
And the French immediately step into it. Because the English left over a budget dispute, the French realize Nazir Jing is vulnerable.
Yes, they see the opening.
Which leads us to December 1750, and honestly, one of the most cinematic betrayals in this entire text.
Oh, it's wild.
The French garrison is in deep distress by this point, but those secret intrigues with the prime minister finally pay off. On December 5th, they execute this incredibly detailed assassination plan.
Right. So the French forces march out at 3 in the morning to attack Nazir Jing's camp. Now, assaulting a massive encampment in the pitch black of an 18th century night is incredibly risky.
Yeah, I mean, you can't see anything.
Exactly. You can't see uniforms. The confusion is normally just absolute.
But they had a system, right? The conspirators inside the camp set up this brilliant signal.
They did.
The French know exactly who is friendly and who is a target because the traitors inside the camp are firing their weapons using only blank powder.
Right.
Whereas the French are firing live musket balls. So the blank powder was basically an 18th century IFF system, identify friend or foe.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
Because the sound, the flash, and the lack of an actual bullet impact told the French exactly who was on their payroll in the dark.
It is a perfectly coordinated, completely deadly raid.
Yeah.
And as the attack begins, Nazir Jing is awakened by all this gunfire.
Right.
He gets dressed, mounts his war elephant, and rides out into the chaos to command his troops.
Yeah.
And he spots the nabobs of Kutupah and Kundamore, men he firmly believes are his loyal allies. He rides his elephant right up to them, demanding to know why they aren't engaging the French.
So he's sitting on an elephant yelling at them for cowardice.
Yes.
And the text says they just look at him, tell him they know of no enemy but him, draw their pistols, and shoot him dead. Right there on the elephant.
Just point blank.
And then they cut off his head and stick it on a spear for the whole army to see. The psychological shock is so total that hostilities just cease. The whole camp goes completely quiet.
It's a brutal decapitation strike, literally and figuratively. And with Nazir Jing dead, the very nephew he had imprisoned, Muzaffar Jing, the French ally, is pulled out of his cell and immediately proclaimed Prince of the Empire.
Wow.
The French proxy is completely back in power.
And this brings out a level of arrogance in the French commander, Dupleix, that is almost hard to believe.
His ego is off the charts.
He is so thrilled by this assassination that he builds a brand new town on the exact spot of the murder, names it after himself, and offers 3,000 rupees to anyone who will settle there.
Yeah.
He even commissions a massive stone monument with an inscription translated into French, Arabic, Persian, and Hindustan, just bragging about his victory.
What's really fascinating here is the psychology behind that decision. Because Dupleix isn't just celebrating, he is carving a narrative into the landscape.
Yeah, literally in stone.
Right. He wants the entire subcontinent to look at that monument and internalize that the French are the permanent, unassailable puppet masters of the region.
It's like a modern billionaire owner naming a multi-billion-dollar sports stadium after themselves before the team has even made the playoffs.
Yeah, exactly.
You're setting yourself up for a massive karmic downfall by painting a huge target on your own back.
Well, and the target is about to be hit. Because while Dupleix is building his vanity city, the English are facing total expulsion from India.
They're on the ropes.
They really are. Their last remaining ally, Muhammad Ali, is begging for help from his fortress at Trichinopoly. But the English have very few troops left and almost no budget to hire more.
They are so desperate they have to look outside the traditional military hierarchy entirely. Yeah. Which brings us to Mr. Robert Clive.
Yes.
The pamphlet introduces him merely as a, quote, young gentleman, unquote, who had laid aside the sword and was serving as a purveyor to the army. Basically, he was a logistics guy.
A civilian clerk handling supplies, exactly. And he offers his services as a volunteer, without any pay. The English are in such dire straits that they actually give this unpaid purveyor a military commission.
It's incredible.
It is. So on August 22nd, 1751, He boards a ship called the Wager.
And his army is tiny. He has, what, 130 Europeans with him initially?
Yes, very small force.
And with this minuscule force, he marches straight across the country to the massive capital city of Arcot. And he just takes it.
Just walks right in.
The garrison there essentially abandons the fort without a fight. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Because what Clive does next completely changes the trajectory of the whole war.
Right, because the standard operating procedure for a conquering army in the 18th century, particularly a mercenary force, was to loot the city.
Yeah.
Or at the very least, to extort the wealthy citizens.
Right. The chief people of Arcot actually panic and offer Clive a massive bribe just to prevent their homes from being sacked. But Clive refuses the money.
He says no.
He issues a strict proclamation saying anyone who stays in the city will be protected. If they want to leave, they can take all their valuables with them.
Which is unheard of.
Exactly. And most importantly, for any grain or provisions his army takes, he pays the local people the full, exact market value.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this isn't just about Clive being a decent person. This is about information economics.
Oh, I like that term, information economics.
Yeah, because in an environment defined by corruption, shifting allegiances, and extortion, Clive realizes that predictability and fair payment are disruptive technologies.
Right.
By treating the civilian population with respect and paying them for their goods, he didn't just gain a good reputation.
He bought himself the ultimate spy network.
Exactly. The text explicitly points out that the local people who had left the fort became entirely loyal to him. They provided him with the, quote, most exact intelligence of all the enemy's designs, unquote.
And he needed that intelligence immediately, because shortly after he takes Arcot, the French-backed forces arrive with a massive army to lay siege to the city.
Yeah, they trap him.
Clive is trapped inside. But because of his local spies, he knows every single move the enemy is going to make before they make it.
He has perfect data.
So fast forward through this grueling siege to June 14th. The enemy decides they are going to storm the fortress breaches at 3 in the morning. And to force open the massive wooden fortress gates, they use actual war elephants.
It's just terrifying.
They literally drive these massive animals straight at the doors to smash them in.
Wait, how do you actually stop a charging war elephant?
It is a terrifying tactical problem for a small defending force, for sure. But because of his intelligence network, Clive knew the exact time and location of the attack.
Wow.
So he set up masked batteries. These are artillery pieces, cannons that are camouflaged or hidden behind temporary structures. You wait until the massive target, the elephant, is at point-blank range, and then you fire grape shot.
Oh, wow. Like a giant cannon-sized shotgun blast. Precisely. It causes terrible slaughter. The elephants panic, turn around, and trample their own attacking forces.
That is brutal.
It is. The text notes that from one breach alone, where they sent a massive assault, scarce 20 men returned.
That's insane.
The intelligence Clive gathered allowed him to place his very limited firepower exactly where it was needed. The very next day, the enemy retreats in utter haste, leaving their cannons and baggage behind.
And breaking that siege means Clive can finally go on the offensive. He starts hunting down the French forces, who still deeply underestimate this former logistics clerk.
They really do.
Which leads us to the Battle of Calvary-Pâques in February 1752.
This battle is a profound demonstration of tactical adaptation. The French set a very clever trap. They position their artillery and their troops behind a wide, dry ditch and an exceedingly high bank.
Okay, so it's a fortified, entrenched position.
Very much so. And Dupleix, sitting comfortably back in Pondicherry, has arrogantly assured his men that Clive is weak. The pamphlet notes Dupleix told them Clive only had a sergeant and maybe 20 men.
They actually believe their own propaganda.
Exactly.
So Clive marches into this trap, and a brutal firefight breaks out. But a frontal assault against a high bank and a ditch is just suicidal.
Yeah, you can't win that way.
The battle hangs in the balance for hours until night falls. The victory is completely doubtful, but under the cover of darkness, Clive pulls off a massive misdirection.
He keeps the French focused on the front line by continuing the frontal engagement. It holds their attention completely.
Meanwhile, he sends a detachment on a wide compass. It's this massive flanking maneuver.
Right.
They sneak all the way around the battlefield, quietly moving through the pitch-black night until they are directly in the rear of the French battery. They walk right up to the enemy's back door.
It is incredibly daring.
And the execution is flawless. They fire a single platoon, one coordinated volley at close range, right into the backs of the French forces.
And the shock is total. because being hit from behind in the dark breaks an army's psychology instantly. The French, to a man, immediately throw down their arms and surrender. The rest of the forces just scatter into the night. Clive captures a lieutenant, 48 Europeans, and massive amounts of cannon and gunpowder, essentially breaking the back of the French proxy army in that entire region.
And then we get the ultimate poetic justice.
Yes.
Because after this victory, Clive is marching his forces back toward Fort St. David, and on his way, he happens to pass by that vanity town duplex built.
The one with the monument.
The one on the site of Nazir Jing's murder, with the massive monument bragging about permanent French supremacy.
Yeah.
Clive marches right through it and utterly destroys the town. The text dryly notes that it was destroyed, quote, before the inscription was quite finished, unquote.
It's a physical dismantling of the French narrative, and it really precipitates the final collapse of the French proxy, because Clive's continuous victories fracture the French alliances and destroy their supply lines.
Right.
By May and June of 1752, the remaining French forces, who are now commanded by Captain Dantoy and Mr. Law, are pushed all the way back and trapped inside the pagodas of Volconda and Surinam.
Now, when we say pagodas, we aren't talking about, like, small shrines, right?
No. In this context, these pagodas are massive, fortified stone temple complexes. They functioned effectively as fortresses.
But fortresses are only as good as the supplies inside them.
Exactly.
The French are completely cut off. They have no money to pay their troops. And more importantly, they have less than 2 days of rice left. You can't fight if you can't eat.
You really can't.
So on the 3rd of June, they capitulate. The English capture hundreds of Frenchmen, 35 officers, 20 pieces of heavy battering cannon, and massive amounts of warlike stores. It is a total wipeout.
It is. And we really must mention the fate of Chouinna Sahib, the man who helped assassinate the Nabob of Arcot to start this entire war back in 1749.
Oh, right. What happens to him?
When he realizes the pagodas are going to fall, he tries to escape by bribing the king of Tanjore to help him flee. But the geopolitical winds have shifted.
Yeah.
The king of Tanjore takes him prisoner and then, as the text very bluntly states, has his head cut off and exposed in the camp.
Well,
The architect of the initial chaos meets the exact same brutal end as the rulers he overthrew.
it's a staggering conclusion to a 3-year proxy war. So what does this all mean for you listening to this deep dive?
Yeah.
Obviously, you aren't commanding war elephants or laying siege to stone temples, but look at how Robert Clive actually won this conflict. He didn't start with the biggest budget or the largest army.
No, not at all.
He was a civilian logistics clerk, but he understood asymmetric warfare. When he took Arcot, he realized that in a highly corrupt mercenary environment, predictability and fair treatment were his greatest weapons.
Absolutely.
By protecting the locals and paying fair market value, he didn't just act with integrity, he bought an unparalleled intelligence network. So in your own life or career, building genuine trust with your team or your customers isn't just about being a good person, right?
Yeah.
It is a critical strategic advantage. Trust gives you the hidden insights and the data you need to outmaneuver much larger, better resource competitors.
That is a brilliant way to look at information economics. But I want to leave you with a broader thought to mull over, one that emerges directly from the mechanics of this text. As we've detailed today, this entire brutal conflict, complete with midnight assassinations, severed heads on spears, and the shifting of global empires, it was conducted entirely on behalf of trading companies.
Right. It's crazy to think about.
The East India Company essentially abandoned an ally to die over a dispute regarding land revenue spreadsheets. It raises a very sobering historical question.
What's that?
What happens to the scale of human conflict when a private, profit-driven corporation suddenly possesses the military firepower of a sovereign nation?
Wow. That is definitely a heavy question and one worth pondering for sure. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Coromandel Coast. Keep questioning the historical narratives you think you know, and remember, sometimes the most important pieces on the chessboard are the ones operating quietly in the dark.